From Microbe TV, this is Office Hours for Wednesday, the 14th of May, 2025. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and welcome to your viral corner of the internet, a place where you get real science, the facts, no lies, no misinformation, which, as you know, is pervasive in the administration of the U.S. these days. Welcome, everyone. It's good to have you here. It's pouring like crazy. It's been pouring for a few days. It's chilly. Pretty miserable, but I made it here. Tell us where you're from. And meanwhile, I will help introduce the moderators. Tonight we have Les. We have Tom Steinberg from the Oregon Coast Range. And Steph S.F. Vanity. Can't make it tonight. She's flying to Las Vegas. Yeah. And, you know, we have New Jersey Transit going on strike Friday, so it's going to be a mess here in the Northeast. Tell us where you're from. We'll call you out. We'll shout you out. Tonight's agenda, we have a couple of news items. The same depressing garbage that we've been seeing for the previous 100 days or so. And a mini lecture, part 2 of vaccines. Okay, so stay tuned. Get your questions wound up, and let's see who's here. Yeah. So the live chat here begins a little behind what you guys have been doing beforehand. So Costello said strike. Yeah, the engineers, the people who drive the trains, they're going on strike because they want more money. And so, 300,000 commuters are going to be left in the lurch on Friday. There's no way to get, I can't get into New York. Fortunately, I have this studio where I can podcast, but I like the incubator better. It's way technically better than this. It has to be done. I can't walk. Anyway, this is my problem. Let's see who's here. Wayne is in Urbana, 28 and sunny. That's very good. Costella is in Ohio at 17C. EHS Talent, Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. MN is rainy near BC. And Tom is in the Oregon Coast Range where the greenery is magnificent. Brian Silverman is in Montreal. 21C, starting to feel like summer. I'll be in Montreal in July. And there's this deli that people are talking about here in Montreal. Les, the comments got cut off, but Les said it's fabulous. So I want to go. Somebody take me. Well, I could find it myself. If anyone's there and you want to go, grab a pastrami. That would be cool. I love it. Costella is alone and not distracted in Ohio. It's warm and wet out. That's terrific. Dag Finn from Oslo, Norway. 2 a.m. One of these days I have to visit Norway. Dag Finn, there's a lot of good science there, and I'd love to do at least one podcast from there. Will is in Changsha, China, and he says, good morning from Changsha in Chinese. Thank you very much. Yes, it's always lovely to see the names of regular listeners, right? It's the same people, and it's a comforting thing, right? There are occasionally some new people that come by, but it's really nice. Let's see. We are at Will. MN just finished some hummus and flatbread. That's great. Carol is in sunny Bakersfield, our favorite nephrologist, 25C. A little cooler today, right? Usually it's in the high 20s. Kang is in Chicago. We're at 17C and sunny. Okay, now we're talking about food. Cristela has chips, salsa, guacamole, and hummus for some brain food today. And Kang echoes that brain food. Noir LeBlanc is in New York City. Welcome, Noir. Abdul Rahman is in Brooklyn, or it's 17C. That's probably what it is here also. Patricia mentions one of the stories we're going to do tonight. It's RFK swimming in the open sewer that is Rock Creek. We'll get into that because Patricia knows because she's in the D.C. area. Oh, my God. What an idiot. You know, I'll wait. Mark Martin. Hello from Tacoma, Washington. 60 degrees, 15.5 Celsius. Hello, Mark. Good to see you. Steph SF from San Francisco. We're at 62 degrees F. Airy Ozone is in Asheville, 20C with Evening Bird Song. Mark Fuccio, San Jose, California. Mark is an old friend from way back in the early days of TWIV when he worked for Drobo. And we gave away some Drobo storage units. Those are computer storage units. And that was a lot of fun. Always good. Glad you're back. I'm glad you're sticking around. Professor Special K is in Central Illinois. Hello, Professor. Eliza B. It's Southern Ontario, Canada, where it's 18C. Laura is in Washington, Pennsylvania, 67F with occasional sprinkles. And Mark says it's 72 and mostly sunny. In San Jose. Mike and Lori are in Seattle, 15 degrees C. Paul is in Chicago. That's right, home of the new Pope, 23C. Yeah, Uber would probably, from my home, would be $100. Now, there's another option. Would be to Uber to Newark, where I could get the Path into the city. The Path is an independent rail, more like a subway. But to Newark would be $60 too. I don't know. That's not worth it. Although I could go in one day a week, right? Like Friday when I do TWIV or some other day when I do a lot of podcasts. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I was thinking back to the air traffic controller strike. Do you remember that? During the Reagan administration, and he just fired them all. I mean, they're federal employees, and he said, you provide an essential service, you can't strike. Boom, all gone, and you got new people. They're not going to do that in this case. This is a New Jersey transit. It has nothing to do with the feds, but I mean, I understand that they want more money, but you're going to inconvenience way more people than work for the railroad. I don't know. Markle is in the east end of Long Island. Raindrops. John is in Minneapolis, where it's 29C. Terry is in Two Rivers, Alaska. Oh, boy. 53F. Sun sets at 11 p.m. and rises at 4:20. You get 5 hours of night. Oh, my gosh. That's a problem. That's a problem. But welcome. I don't know that we've had anyone from Alaska before. So welcome. Kang says, Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind, and this administration is throwing away our chance for a healthier world with its malignantly mindless approach to science. And others fields too, Kang, right? Not just science, but we don't go into that here, right? The financial world is turned on its end by his ridiculous policies. Unbelievable. There's no reason to destroy health systems. They want to divert money to some other things, but if you just tax the rich, you'd have enough money to do whatever you want. And the U.S. did pretty well in previous years anyway. Joseph is in Ontario, Canada. Welcome. Brian, well, happy to take you to wherever. And yeah, of course, it's also to see you guys again. Montreal's hot in July. Yeah, but I don't really mind the hot. I am Mediterranean, right? I got that Mediterranean blood. I don't mind the hot and the humidity. I actually thrive in it. I don't like the cold as much anymore, but the hot I can handle. Patricia from Massachusetts. We try to keep your brains educated. That's right. Mark Martin, pastrami and Swiss with mustard. Perfection. But the sandwiches are way too big. I guess you have to split them, right? It was the same thing. I don't know that you ever went to a famous New York deli, Mark, but the same thing. The sandwiches are stacked a foot high. It's ridiculous. You can't eat them. It's too much. But it's just the experience. It's just the experience. Artemis in Montreal, hot and humid. Stop talking about food. All I have is peanuts. Okay, sorry. Why do you not have food, Patricia? Yume Kaya is from Japan. Can you say hi to me? Hello, Kaya. I don't think we ever had anyone from Japan. Fabulous. Welcome. Hopefully your English is good enough, right? To understand all this stuff. Hat is from, is that the San Fernando Valley? 74F, I guess so. Rainy, 68 near Raleigh. Kaya, tell us, what is the weather where you are in Japan? That's what we like to do here on office hours. Rainy's in Raleigh, 68. Here's the Schwartz Deli in Montreal. I bet Amy's been there because she spent many years in Montreal. Mark is visiting Norway in June. Very good. I would love to. Last summer I visited Sweden and Finland. It was lovely. And I always wanted to go to Norway. The country there with all the money, right? Questella has not been keeping up with the news. Well, we'll try to keep you. I'm not going to do a comprehensive news review, but just a couple of items that are particularly egregious in the vein of malignant incompetence. SRR is in Paso Robles, where it's 72. And Patricia says to Costello, you may be the last sane person this week because she doesn't pay attention to the news. It's what Alan Dove always says. I don't pay any attention, so I'm not going to get upset because I come on and I'm just complaining about how things are going. Oh, well. Julie is in north central Pennsylvania, where it is 63F. Artemis says Schwartz has become too much of a tourist spot. There are other delis just as good that are less touristy. You bring me to a good deli, okay? Okay, let's see. Artemis. Mark Martin likes guacamole. By the way, folks, let's see how many people are here. 97 and we have 48 likes. So please hit the like button to try and attract people, right? because there's much more regular life drama. So she'll still go crazy. And Mark Martin's going to make steak sandwiches when he gets home. Come fishing, Vincent. Where are you, Terry? I'm not a fisherman. Two Rivers, Alaska. I tell you, Terry, my college roommate, Tom Weinberger, is a professor at the University of Alaska. He's an oceanographer. I haven't seen him since college. I would come to do that. For the $100 for the Uber, we could get you an air mattress for the incubator. Okay, so here's the problem, Professor Special K. I could do that for one night. But there's no way to wash myself, right? So I don't want to go more than one night without taking a shower. But I'm still stuck there, right? I can't go back and forth. Maybe Incubator 2 should have a suite. Maybe it should be an apartment, actually. I don't know. Thank you, SRR, for your contribution to science communication. You know, in these days, it's really important to get the right science. And the administration is not providing it to us. So we do our part here with our little bits of science, and hopefully everyone else can help as well. So we need your contributions to keep this going, basically. Because we don't do ads. We have no other source of income except you guys. And it's not cheap to do this stuff. It's not cheap to be a nonprofit. I'm actually surprised. Dorothy Charging Hawk is in Duluth, where it's 52 by the lakeshore, 62 over the hill, and 81 up on the Iron Range. Well, the Iron Range towns are well away from Lake Superior. How interesting. I don't know any of this geography. I know Lake Superior. I know Duluth, where it is. I've never been. Cool. MN has an avocado that won't ripen. In my experience, they ripen before you eat them, and then they're no good. They're all rotten. I bought some green pears this week. Last weekend. Was it last weekend? Maybe it's 2 weeks ago. They're still hard as a rock. And they're sitting out on the counter. Don't get it. Matteo Guillo is in Glasgow, Scotland. Welcome. I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. Thank you very much. I love doing office hours. It's a lot of fun. People here are fun. And I get to do what I like best, to teach. By the way, our final exam was Monday in my virology course. So now I am collating the grades. I give them an extra credit assignment, which is to watch the movie Contagion and write three things that are wrong, scientifically incorrect in the movie. It's a lot of fun. Did I tell you, I went to a symposium last year where one of the sessions was a discussion with some of the people from Contagion, the writer, the producer, and the lady who portrayed the character of Dr. Hextall, who developed the vaccine. And I got up and I told them, I do this with my class. And they said, what things are wrong? And they didn't know anything about it, of course. Nothing about it. Aerozone, chaos in Newark. 4 air traffic controllers on duty. Yeah, I'm supposed to fly to Montreal in July. I hope it's sorted out by then. Otherwise, I'll take the train. There's a train. Maybe it's called the Montrealer. I don't know. I like trains a lot, especially if they're comfy. Aubrey L., good evening from Richmond. It's 69 F20C and rainy. I'm getting fancy with my weather report. GSD Bio, Jonathan from Encinitas 17C. I'm rolling home from the lab and traffic is loud. Heat makes me pass out. Oh my gosh, I thrive in heat. I love it. I love it. Yes, Laura says, number 47, you know who we're talking about, could sell that gifted plane and solve lots of problems. But he won't, because it's about him. Patricia's going to go buy pastrami and Swiss tomorrow. Ripticomp is from Taos, New Mexico. A very nice place. I have been there for various meetings. I learned to ski in Taos, New Mexico. I love it. Doc Martin's, the restaurant there, is a great restaurant, Doc Martens. Costello loves mustard. What kind of mustard? You know, there are many different kinds of mustard. You like the yellow, which you can put on your hot dogs. The gray poupon, you know, the spicy French mustard. You like the brown mustard with little flecks in it. It's so great to have all these different kinds of stuff, right? Mark loved the little pastrami Swiss bagel I bought him at the incubator. I'm glad you loved it. It was our pleasure to serve you. Mark had a famous Cat's Deli pastrami sandwich when he was in New York for TWIV 1000. Yep, Cat's Deli. It's one of those famous ones where you get huge stacked sandwiches. Very cool. Alicia Ponce Salceda is from Spain, probably in the UK working right now. Well, welcome. Good to have you. Okay, Patricia doesn't feel like cooking. Okay, that's always a good excuse. And Costello always keeps a few lean cuisines around for when I can't deal with the kitchen. Matteo Guillo is in Glasgow where it's 8C, but it's 1 a.m. Good for you for being here. Really appreciate it. Hono Abshie is from Portland, Oregon. A bit sunny, about 59 degrees. Terry is saying from Alaska, fresh salmon out of the river. I wouldn't be able to catch anything. Alicia, hello. I'm visiting New York, leaving Saturday. I emailed you to check if I could visit. Yes, you can visit. I'm sorry, my emails get buried. Let's do tomorrow, okay? Let's say 3 p.m. or afterwards. I'll be there from 3 to 5:30ish or 5:45, okay? So shoot me another email so it'll be at the top of the inbox and I can tell you the address. Between 3 and 5:30 tomorrow, is that going to work? Thursday. I'd love to have you visit. Costello writes, at the house in Indiana, we always have the radio on for weather emergencies. But in this town in Ohio, there are sirens, and I've been back here the last few weeks dealing with stuff. Mark is going to Ireland, Dublin, Galway, and points in between at the end of May. I don't know any microbiologists there. Well, I was in Dublin a couple of years ago for a meeting, microbiology meeting. It's lovely. And the Guinness is beautiful. It's, on tap. It's just great. Yeah, it's good. I can always go to Newark. Portuguese paella. Yeah, Newark has the ironbound section of Newark has great restaurants. You wouldn't think so. It's not a great city. At least parts are not great. But yeah. Mark has a joke. Why has RFK Jr. no peer-reviewed articles? A, you can't find 3 dumb anti-vax peers to review. He hands up. He shows these manuscripts all the time, which are just published in garbage, not peer-reviewed papers, right? That are probably run by anti-vaxxers. And so he holds up the paper and he says, "This is the gold standard evidence." It's ridiculous. All the science, the way you do science is just being violated by him. Midge. Hello, Midge. Welcome back. Okay, Kaya says, we have a good weather now. 15C. Just having my hot milk tea while listening. And don't worry, I have you auto-translate in Japanese. You can do that? You can do that with... like YouTube, you can put auto translator. Or you have something else like on your phone auto translating. Well, that's good. I'll try not to speak too quickly. Pat, Nova Scotia, 18C. Terry says near UAF. Don't worry, you can go to the state virology lab, Fairbanks. Anchorage deals with STIs. Patricia mentions this Minnesota legislation to ban mRNA vaccines. This is what Daniel Griffin mentioned on the last clinical update. Not the last one, the one before. Minnesota is going to make anyone who distributes an mRNA of any kind, mRNA vaccine of any kind, a felony, a crime. they're going to declare it a weapon of mass destruction because it kills so many people. Did you know, folks? I'm joking. It doesn't kill people. It's ridiculous that they would do that, which shows their complete and utter ignorance of science and their complete devotion to politics. Everything becomes a political issue. The mRNA vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna products have saved millions of lives. Excuse me, yes, there are side effects. Sure, but there are way more side effects if you get COVID. I've had 3 Moderna mRNA vaccines, and N of 1 doesn't mean anything. I never had anything happen, and neither did millions of other people. So to say that they kill people is just a lie. It's just a lie. Mark says, put unripe fruit in a bag with a ripe apple. Ethylene gas is released. That is a ripening agent. Yes. If I had a ripe apple, right? What constitutes a ripe apple? You can't even tell, right? Because they're always hard. I mean, that's what makes a good apple, right? It being crunchy. Hello, Lise from Columbus. Great weather. Finished planting my garden. Neighbors are counting on me for my tomatoes. I'm glad you're having fun, Mr. R. I always have fun, except when I'm discussing the horrible things the administration is doing to science. And Costellis' produce seems to either instantly rot or turn into a brick. Mateo says, we saw that movie for the Infection and Immunity Society of Glasgow. What motivates you to keep going? I love science. I absolutely love it. And particular virology just is amazing. There's always something new. I'm familiar with it really well, right? So I can wrap my head around almost any problem. And I like that. And I can teach people too. And I found in these podcasts, right, using the internet, I can reach a lot of people. And people like it. During the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, I was amazed at how many people discovered us. Now, many of them are gone. But we ended up with more people than we had before. But when people need information, the internet is a good place and a bad place to get it. Thank goodness people found us instead of the naysayers, right? So that's what drives me, just now being able to teach, because that's what I do. I don't have a lab anymore. I teach a course at Columbia. I teach various lectures, and I do the podcast and the live stream. So, what keeps you going? You have to find something you're passionate about, right? And then it will keep you going. Terry used Kuho, the movie, for a rabies presentation. Oh boy, Mark has uncorked the 2018 Chateauneuf de Pape to listen to office hours and grill burgers. Well, we are honored. That's very good. And Sabrina is making bread and listening. Questella has never been on a train. Yeah, where you live, it's all cars, right? But here people criticize our transit, but you can get to a lot of places in mass transit here in the Northeast. It's nowhere near like Europe, right? Because as soon as you get out of the Northeast, if you look at the train lines, there's nothing compared to Europe. But that's because we had so much petroleum, and the car industry pushed that and pushed against mass transit. Weaselbox freaked his family and friends out with Contagion at the start of COVID. Yeah, because it's eerily familiar with the things that go on, right? Paul asks, don't you ripen avocados by putting them in a paper bag? It gives off ethylene gas. Pears do. I don't know. I didn't hear that one, but I'll try it. Hono Ubshie messaging my extreme archaea and viruses while listening. Cool. Nothing better. Markle doesn't mind a dry heat, but the humidity is awful. Yeah, I don't mind the humidity. I think it's pretty cool. I'm odd. So Costello likes all the mustard, even the greens and the seeds. Sabrina loves the warm weather. Krishnan, good morning from Malaysia. Welcome. I think you were here before. It's good to have you back. Mike asks, will many researchers leave the U.S. and relocate to Canada, for example? Yeah, I think they will. They're Canada and Europe. Was there notable brain drain during Trump's first term? No, because there were guardrails during his first term. Remember, he didn't have, I don't remember the House or the Senate. He didn't have both of them. So he couldn't do just what he wanted to. And he couldn't take away all science funding. Although he could have done an executive order, which he's done now. But then Congress would have said no, because we appropriated that money. You can't do that. But now it's not the case. And yeah, many people are going to leave, especially early career people, right? They have their whole careers ahead of them. Go to Europe, go to Canada, go somewhere else and work until things sort out, if they ever do. Hello, Visto from Sydney. Nice to see you again in 19C and drizzling. Sabrina is in a reading mode and avoids social media as much as possible. Hey, Leo. 53F and clear skies. He's in California. Need to catch my breath. Go ahead. Take it easy. MN says, might as well tap that thumbs up. This is a reliable source of good info at a time when we need it. Thank you very much. Carol, what are your thoughts on the CDC and FDA recommending a pause in the use of each chikungunya vaccine? So actually, I had something queued up about that. So let's take a look. So this is an infectious attenuated vaccine. And I'm going to go to the article. So it's from the FDA. FDA and CDC recommend pause in use of IXCHIQ. That's the chikungunya vaccine in individuals 60 years of age and older, while post-marketing safety reports are investigated. So what happened was, as of May 7th, they've had 17 serious adverse events, 2 of them resulting in death, in individuals 62 through 89 who received the vaccine during post-marketing use globally. 6 from the U.S. Most of them have been reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which is co-managed by FDA and CDC. And most of them have been in individuals with underlying chronic medical conditions. So they don't know if these serious events were caused by the vaccine. That's what has to be investigated now. So that's why they have paused the use of the vaccine in people over that age, and while they're investigating it. So I think it's a good idea. I don't know if it's going to turn out to be that these events were related to the vaccine or not. Often they're not. But, let them do their investigation. Hopefully they will do it unfettered by this administration. And we'll see what happens. Les says Wisconsin has a bill. It won't pass. Yeah, mRNA vaccine banning. Weasel says you can auto-translate everything nowadays. This is the best time to be a deaf person. So we'll explain that. So let's say someone is on this stream. How do they auto-translate? They use a separate app that's going to do that? Or is there something, could you put subtitles on the stream? I don't know. Even if it passed, it wouldn't survive the courts. Oh, like the Minnesota bill? Yeah, maybe not. Politics really needs to butt out of science. That's a good way to put it. Unfortunately, they're linked because the funding of science is a political thing, right? It's voted on by politicians. So to a certain extent, but the extent to which they're butting into science now is unacceptable. It's absolutely true. Hello, Jeff from Elgin, Illinois. Sunny, warm, 74. Tom says that Minnesota bill is being introduced by 10 crank Republican legislators. I don't see it being passed, but it's annoying and creepy. I don't know why they would even do that. What, to make a point? To get votes? People are going to think that it's bad because of this, and that's just a lie. I can't stand the amount of lies and misinformation. I've said that before. I'm sorry. Could you get one of those electric assisted bikes to ride in on when the trains aren't running? I'd last a week and there'd be no more microbe TV. It's too freaking dangerous around here. Yeah, if it were really rural, that would be cool, but no, I can't do that. Can't do it. March 7/16 is in Amelia, Virginia, where it is currently 18 degrees Celsius. Welcome, Marge. Rip to Comp. Wonderful Doc Martens. Come to Taos and I'll treat you. Yeah, Doc Martens is just a lovely restaurant. Just lovely restaurant. They don't know how to read. Millions of unvaccinated died. That's absolutely right. Did you ever think about being a medical doctor? Oh, my parents, especially my father. My father was a surgeon. He wanted me to be a doctor. Right? I didn't really want to be. And so I had a conflict. I couldn't say no to him. So I got through college, didn't get into medical school. I'll tell you a secret. My parents are long gone, and the MCATs that you take, right, to get into medical school, I stayed up till 4 a.m. the night before at a party. People were like, Vincent, shouldn't you go to sleep? I said, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. And then I went to the exam and I answered the first 20 questions wrong. You have to fill in a little thing with a pencil. I answered them wrong. I had to go back and erase them. So I never got into medical school. I got one interview because a friend of my dad's. I didn't want to go to medical school. I didn't want to be a doctor. But so when I graduated college, I was totally lost in college. I didn't know what to do. So I ended up majoring in biology and took some really cool bio courses and learned a lot of bio. I got a job in a lab after I graduated at a micro lab. And then I discovered viruses and I said I have to be a virologist, and I went for a PhD. It's actually a longer story, but we don't have to tell it now. So no, I never wanted to be a medical doctor. And listen to this. The day my father died, right, there were a bunch of people in the kitchen at my mother's house. One of his partners comes up to me and says, you could have had his practice now. It's so good a practice. I'm like, he just died. I don't want his practice. My gosh, it was creepy. Okay, let's see. That's the story. No, I want to be a doctor. And I'm glad I am what I am. I was born this way. Martha, I picked up my travel supply of Paxlovid and was told it cost $750 for Medicare recipients. Well, that's better than, what is it, $1,600? Good. That's good. Bad Cat, 59F in Winthrop, Maine. Welcome. Costella says you could do a whole science fair project just putting different produce in a bag together, apparently. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. Put this in the bag, put that in the bag. Very cool. I love it. Jeff says there's something very wrong with the Republican Party, that it is so anti-science, in fact. And it is this way because it attracts anti-expert, anti-school conspiracist types. I don't know. That could be part of the reason. They're just kowtowing to Trump, right? If they don't, they get fired. But they're not thinking, right? And well, first of all, they could do something, right? They could somehow say you can't take this money away from NIH because we appropriated it. But they're not going to do that because the MAGAs are kowtowing to him. But they don't think. They don't think. And you'll see one of the stories I'm going to tell you tonight. They're not thinking when they take money away from these programs. They're just taking money away so that they can give it to someone else. It's very frustrating. Mateo says, your course helped me for my last two exams. One was Monday. I graduate this July on microbiology and virology, so thank you deeply. Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. The more microbiologists and virologists I can help, the better. So I had, as usual, I had quite a few students from China in my virology course. They are students at Columbia, and it's very prestigious to go to Columbia, right? And one of them is going to translate, hopefully, my lectures into Chinese. We can educate people in China who don't speak English. That would be great, right? Questella says, Cincinnati has trains, but they don't go anywhere useful for me. I wanted to use it to get to Pennsylvania, but I would have taken 3 days and cost 4 times a flight. So unfortunate. Yeah, the cross-country trains are just not very convenient. Martha says, I contacted Paxlovid through Pfizer and was denied a $0 coupon because my income is 300% above the poverty level, according to the credit rating agencies. What? And Terry says, my course helped. Terry, last year as well. Oh, good. Martha says, I called back and read them my annual gross income from my federal tax form and thus qualified. I was going to ask, is that correct? And it's not. So good. I'm glad about that. Patricia re-listened to Kwame's C-SPAN interview in 23 and was dismayed to hear he characterized spread of HIV in Haiti as MDs returning from Africa. Farmer gave a very different account. Well, yeah. So that's the account that I forgot the author does in the book, The Origin of AIDS. So here's the story, which you heard from me maybe. The as you know, the Belgian Congo, in the 1800s, many countries in Europe were colonizing Africa. They wanted a piece of it. And the Congo was colonized by Belgium. And many of the people who went there spoke French, including the doctors. In the 60s, the the Congolese revolted, kicked the Belgians out, but now they had no doctors. So they got doctors from Haiti to come, and they picked up HIV and brought it back to Haiti. I don't know what the farmer alternative is for that. Markle says, I read the EU had a $500,000 EU fund to attract scientists from the U.S. who were fired. Yeah, many countries are wanting some. You can't take them all, obviously, but you could attract good ones, yeah. Yeah, maybe this Paxlovid will help others. So if you're denied, just tell them your income if you think your income is in the area that you should have zero cost. El Cabong, visiting New York City, where I grew up, from Richmond, Virginia. Science Rules. Welcome, El. It's cool. It's cool. Dr. Shropshire, Bro Shropshire, welcome. Enjoying Microbe TV on my ride from New Orleans to Birmingham. Nice weather and surprisingly no traffic. Welcome and good to have you as always. Brian writes, I asked Chat GPT, why do 90% of archaea keep CRISPR-Cas while only 40% of bacteria? Part of the answer was harsh. Virus-rich habitats give archaea a stronger benefit for adaptive immunity. I'm not sure that 90% of archaea live in harsh virus-rich habitats. I mean, bacteria all live in virus-rich habitats, so you would think that most of them would have CRISPR-Cas as well. So I'm not sure that's the reason. Mark Martin, can you weigh in if you're still here? It's cool. Les says Japanese is built into YouTube. So you could do closed captions on YouTube in Japanese. That's cool. Well, that was our first visitor from Japan, so maybe there'll be more. It would be nice. Lots of good science in Japan. Professor Special K writes, I hope scientists who are out of work from this insane chainsaw of federal funding find work in the hundreds of thousands of unoccupied STEM teaching positions in the U.S. and influence future voters. You know, that's a great idea because these are people who understand the scientific method. And I have always said we need teachers who are scientists. And this is a great opportunity to do that. Yeah, good idea. Now, you know, not everyone can teach. That's the problem. But for those who can, they can teach how science is done, not just have you memorize it. I'm not criticizing current teachers, but if you're not a scientist, it's hard for you to explain how scientific discoveries are made. Weasel says they have a Chrome extension for live CC, but YouTube CC, you can change the language to whoever you want. Try it out in some of your vids. I'll have to try it out. And Kaya, did you know you can choose closed captions on the stream in Japanese? That would be cool. Somebody with a car, just go pick them up and take them. I don't know anybody with a car. Visto. When herpes virus goes dormant in nerves and neurons, could it be cleared? How many infected? Would clearance be a lot of damage? Well, it's hard to know where all the latency is, right? So one of the main sites for herpes 1, the oral one, are the trigeminal ganglia. There's one on either side of your head. So that's where the nerves, your facial nerves, join and then they synapse into the brain. So you really shouldn't take that out, right? You're going to have problems smiling or making funny faces. So I don't think that's a solution. You need to have some way to cut the DNA out. We don't have that yet. EHS says, TWIV has saved many lives. I know a bunch of people who changed their COVID decisions after being introduced to TWIV. Well, that's nice. I guess I've sort of tangentially heard that. It's really good that people listen to Daniel, for example, and change their decision. It's great. Love it. Abdur, Rahman, you want to come too to the incubator? You're welcome. So 3, I finished with TWIM. And then I don't have clinical update because we did that today. Daniel came to the incubator. So if you also want to come, it's fine. Yeah. 352 7th Avenue, Suite 703. And also the young lady who wanted to come also from Spain. Yeah, come. Abdur, no, I just said that. Mike, I believe RFK Jr. has lifted his woo remedies from the late Ray Peat. He was a researcher through a lens of process theology. Clinical trials were ignored while biomechanics were elevated. I'm not familiar with Ray Peat. AT, hi, Professor. We just wanted to say, admire your dedication to making education available for everyone. Thank you. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. We have a certain kind of biology education, but it's what we know how to do. Glad you like it. Weasel says biology is a class everyone should take. So cool. Yeah, it has to be taught properly, though, right? It can't be boring. Dr. Bro Shropshire, 81F in Hattiesburg, Missouri. Visto, fluoride in water, banned. Swimming in sewage, recommended. All days are opposite day in the HHS now. You're absolutely right. By the way, Today on Clinical Update, someone wrote in and said you can buy fluoride tablets for those of you who live in areas where the water is not fluoridated. I don't know how you use them, but you can buy them. Yeah. 750, Martha says, is not good. It was free before 3-1. Medicare is being attacked. That's for sure. That is for sure. Spamlet asks, can some viruses like dengue, say, damage germline cells to have effects in offspring? My father described having breakbone fever in the Navy in Burma in World War II. No, I'm not aware that dengue virus will replicate in germ cells. Right? And you'd really have to be integrated and passed on to do something. But it's not. It's not replicating in those cells. Jeff says the GOP's anti-expert position goes back to their pro-business agenda because experts generally call for regulation on businesses that is antithetical to their libertarian market-based ideology. We should have regulation. You can't incessantly pollute and raise the temperature of the earth. Eventually, there's not going to be anything left. Selfishness. Hooray for medication and education. Yeah. Tom writes, Belgian occupation of Congo is a long, dreadful atrocity. Even other colonialist powers were repulsed by the events. Terry writes, my virology professor loved the Zika mug I got him from your shop. He put up with all my, but why? And now the heck for the last year. I don't understand. But it's great you got a Zika mug. Yeah. So we made that when we were working on Zika a number of years ago. I don't believe that account. Farmer draws very strong conclusion that no HIV serology during the time frame of the account you cited saved blood from other tests. Yeah, but there's phylogenetic analysis of isolates, which show very clearly that HIV went from the Congo to Haiti and hence from Haiti to the U.S. It's a paper in PNAS, which we discussed on TWIV a long time ago, and which I just talked about in my recent HIV lecture, which is pretty compelling, more so than serology. So, Patricia, don't say, I don't believe. Say, the data are not consistent with that, in my opinion. Belief has no place in science, right? You know that. You have to put it a different way. Otherwise, people, hear you and they'll think it's a belief system. But I think that there's good evidence in support of that idea. Jeff says, however, it wasn't always as bad as Nixon created the EPA with the full support of Republicans in that period. They also passed the Endangered Species Act. They understood that the market failed. Yes, and Reagan introduced the Vaccine Compensation Act because in the 80s, there was so much litigation against vaccines that most of the vaccine manufacturers dropped out. There were 4 vaccine manufacturers left. So he recognized that he needed this program to serve as an interface and to compensate people who had vaccine injury and to limit, therefore, litigation. And that really revived the industry. And now people are afraid that RFK could do that, eliminate the Vaccine Compensation Act or remove certain vaccines from it or add autism to the list of compensatable injuries. That would bankrupt all of the vaccine manufacturers because the fund, which has a couple of $1 billion in it now, would rapidly be exhausted. By the way, each vaccine dose you buy has a 25-cent tax that goes into the Vaccine Compensation Fund. And then cases are considered individually. And the lawyers tell people who have some kind of vaccine-related injury, I can get you more money. Don't accept that. So, it's all about money. Yes, George Bush was instrumental with PEPFAR. Exactly. I wonder what the Republican Party is very different now. They have they've lost their way, and hopefully they get kicked out of the universe. Professor Special K writes, as a teacher, the first time a student said to me, "Oh, I get it now. That was a high I've been chasing for 23 years. It is. And when they ask a question, I don't understand this, and you explain it, and they say, I got it. It's lovely. Or how they love it, right? How they love it. Hello, Tona. You like the audio. Good. It is. I spent time in the beginning to set this up in a way that makes it clear. This isn't the best environment. There's a furnace and an air conditioning unit next door, so that kicks in and you get some hum. But the incubator is perfect for this. I wasn't expecting those faces. Well, we need to be lighthearted in these times, right? Tom asks, it wasn't the book published in before data were available. So she told us the name here, Patricia Paul Farmer, Infection and Inequality. And certainly the phylogenetic data are more recent and show a clear passage of virus from the Congo to Haiti. Okay. Spamlet writes, don't worry, COVID did the work a favor by getting all the best teachers on YouTube, teaching us all brilliantly for free. I only wish there were enough hours in the day to listen to you all. So I don't think Daniel has ever missed a clinical update, has he? No. I missed one last year, I think, but Daniel has never, no. Mississippi. Sorry, I knew that when I said it. Missouri is MI? Okay, thank you. I knew it. Well, anyway, I'm not going to debate the origin of HIV. You should read The Origin of AIDS too, okay? It's a different view. Do adults benefit from fluoride in water, or is the benefit mostly gotten when young? Let's find out. You know, Michael Schmidt was going to talk about this. Is fluoride good for adults? Yeah, you have a continuous, at any age, it continuously strengthens your tooth enamel. So not just kids. Yeah. There's the address of the incubator for those two that want to come tomorrow at 3 p.m. Yeah, Quammen is a journalist, but he didn't write the theory, Patricia, okay? The Origin of AIDS is written by a physician, a medical doctor who practiced in Africa and saw what was going on there. So more qualified than Quammen. All right. Quammen just got his information from Jacques. Can't remember. Let's look it up. The Origin of AIDS. What's his name? Jacques Pepin. Yeah, I didn't think it was, I thought it was that. Jacques Pepin, The Origin of AIDS, okay? He's qualified to write about that. But that predates the phylogenetics. Michael Warraby, you have to look up his research papers and read those to understand the phylogenetics, how they explain the transit. It's not Quammen's bag at all. He's just reinterpreting it. I will look at farmers' data. I will, but I don't think you should dismiss it outright either. I'm just telling you there's another potential way that this could have happened. And just because farmers said it's this way doesn't mean that it's that way. In fact, Michael Warraby would probably say he's wrong. But yeah, I'll take a look at it. No problem. Kang writes, I was born before 57, but my PCP tested my titers and they were high for measles and rubella, but non-existent for mumps. Recommendations for a booster. So the mumps titers declined. And so some people were getting second shots, but I don't know in your situation. Um, this, I have a feeling this was asked of Daniel. But if you haven't seen it, why don't you send in an email to daniel@microbe.tv. Okay, right. Mississippi is MS and MO is Missouri, right. Spamlet remembers as a child swimming in the sea around the UK, we tended to gather around the sewage outfalls where the water was warmer. Immune systems must work very well. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's not good. Mike says, for your information, Myers has announced he's intending to devote time to making science videos. Would he be someone you can collaborate with? PZ Myers. American biologist who writes the Pharyngula Science blog. He's a developmental biologist. Okay. I don't know how that would work. I'd be happy to help him out, but he should not talk about viruses because he's not a virologist. I have people in every field who are experts who talk about viruses or bacteria or immunity, etc. Right? So one person cannot cover everything. You're not an expert. Topic suggestion: bispecific antibody drug conjugates. I'll write it down. I got a whole list here. Bispecific antibody drug. See, I'm not an expert in that at all. I would have to get someone who is. Artemis writes, when my uncle was a student, he had an economy course exam. The professor asked him a question and he answered, I believe. The professor replied, this is an economic exam, not a theology exam. Yeah, you should never use I believe in a science sentence. Like you may say, I believe he is wrong. I would say the data don't support your position because it's not a belief system. Yeah. Will says, I understand that Adams stated that the Constitution relied on the constituents being committed to virtue. Lawmakers have abandoned virtue. It does, yeah. It does. Is fluoride good for cats? I have no idea. I don't know. Someone might know. Yeah, Jacques Pepin is a chef, but he's also a different Jacques. Pepin is the author of The Origin of AIDS, and he was a physician in Africa. I forget when, but he made lots of observations that are relevant to the origin of AIDS. That's why when I was trying to think of the name, I said, no, it can't be Jacques Pepin. He's a chef, but it's a different Jacques Pepin. Maybe they're related. I don't know. Would be funny. Sabrina writes, those times during the 80s and 90s, it was so scary when there wasn't the research and knowledge. It took so much to gain all that. And to just disregard science and medicine is beyond reasoning. Of course it is. And I don't know that most Americans get it. I mean, his approval rating has dropped a lot, but I'm not sure it's because of NIH cuts and CDC and FDA cuts. I think it's because of the economy. And most people don't have any idea about the science. That's a problem. They don't appreciate what science has done for them. Warby, Mark writes, is great. On TWIV a few years ago, he describes his research tracking spread of SARS-CoV-2 from the livestock market in Wuhan. Nobel Prize-worthy work. Yeah, well, Michael Warby is very good. Very good. And Michigan is MI. So let's look for the state. Let's see. Abbreviation Missouri is MO. Mississippi is MS. Okay, MS and MO, and MI is Michigan. I'm a dummy when it comes to state abbreviations. What's Maine? I think it's ME. ME. You know what New Jersey is? That's easy. New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island. Arkansas, it would be AK, right? Elizabeth writes, I haven't read the book, but from the summary, I don't think Farmer's theory is incompatible with the current science. Social inequalities probably did make Haiti's population more susceptible. That's not what I'm debating. Mike writes, wild story about lowest school vax rate of 14%. MMR from Mercy Culture Church. They exploited abuse victims for financial gains. These are anti-vaxxers' morality. This is something I never understood, is how the anti-vaxxers can live with their approach and having people die, get very sick and often die. There's no morality involved. It's incredible. So it's 9 o'clock. It's time for a mini lecture. I will put a marker here to come back to this question. Oh, I didn't tell you some news items that I wanted to. Okay, the first one is very straightforward. And this is, well, we talked about the Chikungunya vaccine, right? And the other one was RFK Jr. goes swimming with grandchildren in a contaminated D.C. creek. The National Park Service has a long-standing warning about swimming or wading in Rock Creek due to high levels of bacteria and other infectious pathogens, because it's basically a sewer, as someone mentioned already. So he posted photos of himself and his grandchildren swimming in the contaminated waters on Mother's Day. In one photo, he's fully submerged. High bacteria levels. Stay out of the water to protect stream banks, plants, and animals, and keep you and your family safe from illness. It has high levels of bacteria and other pathogens that make swimming, wading, and other contact with water a hazard to human and pet health. You know, he doesn't believe in infectious diseases. He believes in miasma, so can't possibly be a problem to swim in a sewer, basically. Oh my gosh. So that was one story I wanted to tell you about. And the other one is, this is really disgusting. The Trump administration has terminated a federal advisory group that issues recommendations to U.S. health agencies to help prevent the spread of infectious diseases in healthcare facilities. So the committee is called the Healthcare Infection Control Practices Advisory Committee. 14 voting non-federal employee members are selected by the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary with expertise in like infectious diseases, infection control, epidemiology, etc. They meet 8 times a year in Atlanta, and it was established in 1991 to craft and review guidance on infection control and prevention protocols used by U.S. healthcare facilities to prevent both patients and healthcare workers from infectious diseases. So it's been around for 30 years. It has issued evidence-based recommendations to the CDC on standard precautions for patient care, like hand hygiene and use of PPE, isolation of sick patients, environmental infection control, how to clean medical devices, and much, much more. So this advisory group has been terminated. Okay? There is zero reason to terminate. This is an important group that does important work. And another example of malignant incompetence. They're just cutting programs. They have no idea what they're for. Boy, it really burns me up. So those are the two things I wanted to tell you. And I'm glad I remembered, because in past days, I can't remember what I was going to say. Okay, I've forgotten things to give to you. All right, so let's do a mini lecture here. It is going to be, I'll get back to some questions. I'll try and make this as quick as possible and still be coherent, right? So let's go to the screen share. Vaccines part 2. Nothing shocks me. I'm a scientist is the quote from Indiana Jones. So next on our list of vaccines, we're going through the different kinds of vaccines. There's subunit vaccines. And there are two approaches here. You could take the virus and break it into subunits and purify them, and you immunize with those. Or you could clone the viral gene that you want to have an antigen from, and express it in bacteria, yeast, insect cells, cell culture, and then purify the protein. Or if the antigen's a capsid, sometimes it will fold into virus-like particles. So flu block is an example of doing this. So these are using insect cells. You use a virus of insects called a baculovirus, and you put the gene for the influenza virus hemagglutinin into the baculovirus. You grow them in a fermenter, and then you can purify the protein. And this is actually an approved vaccine, flu block. So that's a purified recombinant protein. Shingrix, of course, a really good vaccine to prevent shingles. It's the recombinant glycoprotein GE. These herpes viruses have many different glycoproteins in their envelope. And this one is GE produced in mammalian cells. It's secreted, it's purified, and mixed with an adjuvant and injected. So this is a recombinant protein. It's a subunit. It is a spike protein, very much like Novavax's COVID vaccine, which is a spike protein produced recombinantly. The HPV vaccine is another example. Here's one where it assembles into MC capsids. So the hepatitis B virus is an enveloped virus with a double-stranded DNA genome. And the envelope contains glycoproteins that one of which is called the hepatitis B surface antigen. And this is produced in yeast from the gene, and they assemble into virus-like particles. So the complete virus particle is shown on the left here, and the virus-like particles are on the right. So they're empty, but they are made up of the HBs antigen. And so this is a vaccine that prevents cancer. That's why we give it to babies shortly after they're born, so they don't get infected from their mothers and or other people that are in contact with them. Because if you're infected at a young age, you're more likely to have infection for your whole life and develop liver cancer. And so that's why we want to vaccinate these kids. Someone just asked, Visto just asked, what's CHO? Chinese hamster ovary cells. So there's a species of hamster called Chinese hamsters, and these are made from the ovaries. They're just a cell line that have been around for many years that are very useful for certain things like this. And then, of course, papillomavirus vaccine. So let's spend just a little bit of time talking about human papillomaviruses. So a papilloma is a wart. These are viruses that cause warts. There are over 170 types of virus, and there are different kinds of warts, as you know. Some of these viruses are transmitted sexually and comprise the most common sexually transmitted disease in the U.S. And some of these sexually transmitted HPVs cause low-risk genital warts, which means they don't progress to cancer, but others are high risk for cancers, including cancers of the cervix, the vagina, penis, anus, and the oral pharynx. There are about 31,000 cancers of these sorts per year in the U.S., mostly in types 16 and 18. Remember, there are over 170 types of papillomaviruses. And nearly half of Americans are infected with genital HPVs. These would be types 18 through 59. And you can see this little graph on the right here showing the high proportion of men and women of different ethnic backgrounds who are infected with these genital HPVs. Typically, you get them when you are becoming sexually active. So we have a number of HPV vaccines. They all comprise, what happened? Well, that's last week's. Let's go back. Okay, sorry. I just clicked something. Now it doesn't want to play anymore. Play slideshow. What's the matter? Oh, here it is. It's on another slide. Well, now I shut the whole thing down. Okay. Here we go. All right. We have a number of papillomavirus vaccines, and they, come on, I just want to click and move it. Why are you doing this? All right. I'm going to put it behind it. I guess that's how play in the window works. Basically, you take the gene for the viral capsid protein. The viral capsids are made up of a protein called L1 mainly. So you take the L1 coding region, and then you can express the gene in yeast or in baculoviruses, insect viruses, and they assemble into particles, virus-like particles with no genome, so they're not infectious, and then those are injected into you, and you make antibodies that prevent the development of cancer in these mucosal areas. So the first was Gardasil by Merck with types 6, 11, 16, and 18 made in yeast. Then Merck expanded to 9 different types. And then GlaxoSmithKline makes Cervarix, which is type 16 and 18 produced in insect cells. And of course, these vaccines should be given before becoming sexually active. But you can still give them up to 45 years of age because maybe a different serotype is involved from what you were infected with. Some future influenza vaccines may involve the synthesis of virus-like particles. If you synthesize the hemagglutinin alone in cells, it leads to the production of particles like this one here on the right that are immunogenic. It looks very much like an influenza virus, and if you inject it into people, it leads to an immune response. So this has been done in plants. You can make these particles in plants. You can, from a square meter of plants, you can make 20,000 doses at under 20 cents per dose. It's really remarkable. And so what you do is you can either introduce the HA gene transiently, or you can make transgenic plants and harvest and purify the HA. So these have been through clinical trials, and I don't know if they're going to be approved or not, but it's another way of making a recombinant vaccine. Now, these subunit vaccines have pros and cons, right? They are recombinant DNA technology, so you can make them fast, and there are no viral genomes, there's no infectious virus. But they're expensive, they have to be injected, and they have poor antigenicity. And the reason is that viral proteins don't replicate or infect. They don't cause inflammation. And if you remember, you need inflammation to properly activate the adaptive responses, which include antibodies and T cells. So what do? Well, we add adjuvants to these virus-like particle vaccines to mimic the inflammatory effects of infection, and restore good immune responses in that way. So adjuvants stimulate early processes in immune recognition, and they produce a more robust acquired immune response, mainly by inducing inflammation. And a few licensed adjuvants are shown here. We have alum, which is aluminum hydroxide and phosphate. That's in the HPV vaccine in the U.S. AS1 is monophospholipid A, which is shown here. This is a toll-like receptor 4 ligand. It stimulates innate immunity, and that's in the Shingrix vaccine. AS4 is in Cervarix. It's alum and monophospholipid A, same as Shingrix. And then MF59 is a squalene oil and water emulsion, which is used in Europe in some vaccines. Some new vaccine technologies include delivery methods that don't use needles. Here's a microneedle patch. These are small squares of plastic, as you can see by the finger there, and with tiny needles in it. It's saturated with vaccine, and then it's put on your skin, typically on your shoulder, with a Band-Aid. So you don't need a trained healthcare worker to inject. These are in testing now for a variety of vaccines. I think if they could eliminate the needle, this would be great. Many vaccines need to be frozen. And here on the right, you see the results of thermostabilizing influenza vaccine in sugars. You can dry the vaccine in a sugar solution, and it helps preserve its stability. For example, this is an experiment where we're incubating influenza vaccine at 40 degrees Celsius. So the red shows you that in 2 days, we've lost all of the infectivity. But if you mix it with sugars in the proper way, you do lose some infectivity, but you do preserve some, and presumably this can be improved after more research. We've heard a little bit about universal influenza vaccines, and there have been many universal flu vaccine approaches being developed. Certainly the one that the current administration is putting $500 million into is not one of them. But here's one approach where, if you inject influenza virus into people, most of the antibodies are directed against the head of the hemagglutinin protein. The stem, however, gets very little attention from the immune response, yet these epitopes don't vary as much as do the ones on the head. So we'd like to have more antibodies raised against these stem region epitopes. And so one approach is to immunize people with a chimeric hemagglutinin protein, where the stem is from a relevant human influenza virus like H1, and the head is from an influenza virus that rarely, if ever, infects humans. And then the first time you inject this, you're going to get mostly antibodies to the head and just a few to the stem. And then you boost with a different chimeric protein, where again we have the stem from H1 and the head from H8. Now you're going to have a new response to the head and more of a memory response to the stem, and you can do the same thing 3 times. And so this is another approach to make a vaccine that could, because these stem epitopes can, antibodies against them can neutralize many more kinds of influenza viruses than our usual vaccines. Okay, that brings us to replication competent attenuated vaccines. Here you take the parental virus, and in fact we were just talking about these kinds of chikungunya vaccines that have had some problems. And in these vaccines, you get viral replication, you get an immune response, but you don't get disease. You get either mild or inapparent disease. So let's talk about these. The idea behind them is that if you use an inactivated virus vaccine, you have to give multiple doses to achieve a sufficient immune response. But a replication-competent vaccine will amplify itself, so you, in theory, only have to give 1 dose. So how do you make them? Well, historically, they were empirically derived. You would take a virus and passage it in different species of cells, with the idea that you are now selecting for viruses that better replicate, say, in a monkey cell, and are less better at replicating in human cells, and therefore don't cause disease. And this is how the poliovirus Sabin strains were identified. Today we can do this differently, but the polio vaccine and the measles, mumps, rubella vaccines, which are infectious attenuated vaccines, were all made in this way. Now, FluMist is an example of a replication-competent vaccine, which is administered intranasally. It's sprayed into your nose. You can have multiple components. You can have H1N1, H2, H3N2, influenza B. And the way these are made is you have a master strain, which has all the properties that make this virus attenuated. It's cold adapted, which means it prefers to reproduce in the upper tract. It's temperature sensitive, so it won't reproduce in the lung. It's attenuated in ferrets, and so it replicates only in the nasopharynx, where it produces protective immunity. And if you have a new strain that you want to immunize against, you make reassortants with this master strain, and you have the HA and the NA genes from your current strains. Of course, the Sabin oral polio vaccine is another example of an infectious attenuated vaccine developed by Albert Sabin. And this is a virus you ingest. It reproduces in your gut. It is shed in feces, but it gives rise to antibodies in the gut and in the blood, which prevent neuroinvasion. They prevent invasion of the virus into the brain and spinal cord. And that's also what IPV does, but IPV, of course, is inactivated and it's injected. And the oral vaccine was introduced in the U.S. in 1962. It replaced the inactivated vaccine, and it resulted in the elimination of poliomyelitis in 1979. Albert Sabin made these by passaging the 3 serotypes of poliovirus in various cells and animals and testing their neurovirulence at different passages until he had 3 that were unable to cause disease in animals. These were subject to clinical trials and then licensed in the U.S. in 1961. In 1988, the WHO decided to eradicate poliomyelitis based on the effectiveness of the Sabin strains globally. It was supposed to be eradicated by 2005, and of course we're not there yet, and I doubt we ever will be for reasons that I'll tell you in a moment. But first, we should ask, can viral diseases even be eradicated? And the only human viral disease is smallpox, which the eradication program launched in 1967, eradicated in 1978. And you need 3 features of a viral disease that are essential to be able to eradicate it. Replication in only one host, that is true for smallpox and poliovirus. Vaccination must induce lifelong immunity, true for smallpox, probably for poliovirus. And asymptomatic infections do not contribute to spread. So that's true for smallpox. So whenever you saw someone with this rash of smallpox, you could vaccinate around them and stop transmission. There were no asymptomatic infections that you could not detect. This is not true for poliovirus. Asymptomatic infections do contribute to viral spread in a massive way. 90% of infections are asymptomatic. So the eradication campaign progressed from 1988, 71 polio-free countries in the light color. 10 years later, 156 polio-free countries. Another 10 years, 191 polio-free countries. But now it's a little more complicated than this. And that's because we now know that the vaccine, the attenuated vaccine, can revert and cause poliomyelitis in about 1 in 1.4 million doses. And when we switched from the inactivated to the attenuated vaccine in 1961, we saw that. So this is a graph of cases of paralytic polio with the year, and the line is the total paralytic polio, and the bars are the polio cases caused by the vaccine. And you can see there were 10, 20 cases a year, and even when wild poliomyelitis was eradicated, or the disease was eradicated after 1979 in the U.S., there were still cases of vaccine-associated polio. So in 2000, we switched to IPV, which is what we use now, because it does not cause polio. Unfortunately, the WHO relies on OPV in its eradication campaign, and therefore there are still many, many children in the world who are paralyzed by the vaccine. Now, the vaccine has key mutations in the 5' non-coding region. Here's a diagram of the viral genome. And at the 5' end is a highly structured region. And the 3 vaccine strains have 3 changes that are essential for reducing the neurovirulence of the virus. And these are the determinants of attenuation. And they include the 5' base change in each of the 3 serotypes. And then there are some other changes as well. But in the earliest experiments, it was found that the base in the type 3 vaccine reverted very quickly. So the vaccine has a U, and in children who were immunized with the vaccine, within 47 hours, the virus had reverted to a C. And this virus is excreted by the child and circulates globally. And as I said, 1 in 1.4 million children get paralyzed by these viruses. So back in 2023, this was the situation globally. There were some cases of wild type 1 in Pakistan and Afghanistan. We had eliminated poliomyelitis from India. And all of these green dots are cases of vaccine-derived type 2 polio. So the WHO decided to withdraw the OPV2 component of the vaccine in 2016 because it was causing a lot of cases of polio. Big mistake. As a result, the number of cases of type 2 skyrocketed because type 2 was still circulating, vaccine-derived type 2. So here's the case before OPV2 withdrawal up till 2016. 318 cases of vaccine-derived poliomyelitis in 15 countries. From 2016 to 2023, 3,363 cases in 43 countries. These are human-made cases of polio because if we weren't using this attenuated infectious vaccine, we wouldn't have these. So how do we eliminate these cases, this circulating vaccine-derived polio type 2? Many countries use OPV. We were left with an immunity gap after we took type 2 out, and we cannot eliminate circulation with IPV, although we should be using it. But some people had a different idea, and they said they're going to modify the type 2 virus to prevent reversion to virulence. And they made a number of changes throughout the genome. This virus was tested extensively. It was introduced in 2020 by WHO, given to 600 million kids. No reversion in the 5' end, which was good, but kids were being paralyzed. And this is an early number. But now there are more cases of paralysis. The virus is spreading. So we have now, this virus is called NOPV2. We have now NOPV circulating derived poliovirus. And what happened was, all of these fancy changes that were made throughout the genome, they were all removed by recombination with enteroviruses that are in the children's gut. So the left end of the genome was recombined out and the right end was recombined out. That left only the capsid proteins. So all the modifications introduced were lost. So this was basically a failure. It was initially a slight improvement on the rate of VAP caused by OPV2, but the more doses that are given, that gap is narrowing. So I would say there is nothing of an improvement in NOPV2. So we do need new polio vaccines. IPV should be used globally, but it needs injection. We need a vaccine that induces mucosal immunity. It is not infectious, so it can't cause polio. But research on polio is being terminated, in fact, in June of this year, by bureaucrats who think that polio research is not needed. Another example of decisions being made by people who don't know the field. So can we eradicate it? No, we can't eradicate a virus for which 99% of infections are asymptomatic. We could eliminate poliomyelitis given enough global coverage with IPV, just as we eliminated measles in the US. But everybody has to buy into this. Okay, now, and then finally we have, of course, a new class of vaccine, the mRNA vaccines produced by Moderna and Pfizer. We take the spike coding region of SARS-CoV-2 and we make RNA copies in a test tube. We package those in a lipid coat. And then here's the spike protein, of course, of SARS-CoV-2. We put that into this mRNA synthesizing system. It's injected into your muscle. The particles are taken up by antigen-presenting cells like dendritic cells and macrophages. The protein is made, it's displayed on the surface, and leads to the induction of an immune response. Contrary to what people have said, there's no evidence of prolonged expression of this protein. There's no evidence that it integrates and causes any problems. It is a very safe vaccine that has been in many, many millions of people. And here's a map of the COVID vaccine doses given by April 2023. And you can see the darker green countries have more coverage. And you can see there, well, the striped ones we have no data for. But you can see much of Africa is light colored. And this is always a failing in vaccine coverage. Okay, that's it for our vaccine lecture for this week. Let's go back to questions. So here's one from Don who says, if you have some virus and an antigen, is it possible to separate out ones that the antigen will bind to and then reproduce that line of the virus? Don't understand your question. Is it possible to separate out ones that the antigen will bind to? You can certainly take the gene for an antigen and make a vaccine from it, as I've discussed. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking or not. Ariozone recently adopted a young female FIV, feline infectious peritonitis virus. No, feline, what is it? Feline immunodeficiency virus is another one. Feline infectious peritonitis virus. FIV, it's an immunodeficiency virus, much like HIV. If you know the story, I'd appreciate hearing. I could do that. I could do a mini lecture on FIV. It's interesting. Alan says, could I ask a question related to my virology classes project regarding a proposal for either a therapeutic or preventive vaccine to a virus of our choice? Sure. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you for the videos, the interviews with all these amazing people who spend their lives researching and teaching to share what they have learned. You're welcome. Jim the Evo caught my lecture on quasi-species and viruses. Glad I did, as it helped with the research question I've got going on. Excellent. Massachusetts, Maine, Mississippi, Montana, Missouri. No, Mrs. Michigan, Montana, Missouri, and Mississippi. Min, mo, mess. Oh boy, that's cool. Jason in France, welcome. Nice to have you. And now Bobby K is going after chemtrails. What a moron. Not a maroon head. MD is Maryland. Right. What did I say? Yeah, we didn't have it in this list, right? AK is Alaska. IR is, and I got that wrong too. That's why I stick to viruses. AK equals Alaska. What did I say it was? I thought the Arkansas was AK. Right, it's AR. A guy from UK once asked me, why isn't it Arkansas? If Kansas is a state, why isn't it Arkansas? No, it's Arkansas. I don't know why. From Spamlet, Bedfordshire, UK, was a brick-making centre with tall chimneys, belching smoke you could taste in the air for miles. Stories of fluorides giving cows brittle bones from the grass, breaking legs. Yeah, well, people don't get brittle bones from the fluoride that's in our drinking water. Maybe it's different. I just don't know. Yeah. Well, this is interesting. Paul Green says Adams went on to say an immoral man could rip through the Constitution much like a whale breaking through a net. Yeah, it's fragile. It has to have people who are willing to uphold it. And that is the job of the president and of Congress. And so if they say, we don't want to do that, what do? Right? Nobody's ever done that before. Nevitz says the tragedy of HIV and AIDS and all the research around it taught us so much. The double tragedy is we ignore what we have learned. Pretty much, yeah. We have, very good information on how it spilled over, yet we keep having spillovers over and over. "29 years ago, I had a check refused because the cashier thought that AK was Arkansas in a store in Arkansas right across from the store's home office." That's very funny. Isn't sewer a source of miasma? Bad air, yeah, but it's also got microbes, right? Lisa asks if there's poliovirus in the sewage water. If it's bona fide human sewage, yes, I bet there's poliovirus in it, yeah. But, they're all vaccinated. Excuse me. But, despite that, he rails against polio vaccine. They're all vaccinated against polio. Little hypocrisy, eh? Aubrey L. writes, DJT didn't take COVID seriously until it damn near killed him. What the incubation period of the multitude of pathogens JFK may have infected himself? A couple of days to 2 weeks, I would guess. Bring on the science. More scientists, less politicians. Am I only reviewing approved vaccine platforms? Yes. Well, some of them weren't approved, no. But some of them were. It's a mix. How many viral gene modifications could a competent lab tech perform in a day? I tried explaining the chances of a lab mod causing a pandemic is 1 billion to 1. He asked, how do I know? I don't really. No, it's more like, well, you can do pretty massive modifications. We talked about that on a recent TWIV. Thousands a day. But the problem is you don't know what to make. If you want to make random changes, then you're going to end up having tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of candidates. You can't possibly test them all. And you don't know what to change, really. So, and there's just no precursor to SARS-CoV-2 that anybody had that was close enough to be able to modify to make it SARS-CoV-2. That's the bottom line. All this other discussion is fine, but nobody had the precursor. And people don't seem to get that. They say, oh, they're lying. But I'm sorry, you have no evidence that they're lying. So you can't use that as a scientific argument. Yeah, so after modification, you have to test it. And you can't test tens of thousands of candidates. But, yeah, no, not happening. Thank you, Dr. Bro Shropshire, for your contribution to science communication. Thankful for Microbe TV. Nevitz worked on the HPV vaccine, an amazing project. L1 is the late gene 1. So capsid proteins are typically late genes in viral reproduction cycles. You don't need them till the late part of the phase when you've finally made some nucleic acid. Yes, Will. Shingrix also reduces the risk of heart disease and dementia. So Shingrix turns out does the same thing as the chickenpox vaccine, and it also reduces the risk of heart disease. And why is HPV not recommended for older? It hasn't been tested in them. That's the only reason. There are fake scare pictures of actual barnacles growing on people. I don't know if it's a papillomavirus. They're not caused by HPV. They're called seborrheic keratoses. They're non-cancerous benign growths that are non-contagious, not related to HPV. Yep. For a respiratory virus, why aren't the vaccines inhaled? So the only one that is the flu mist, which is, and you don't need to inhale it in your lungs. You just need to inhale it in the upper tract because that's where the virus will come in that's infecting you, and that's where you need to reduce its replication. So that's the only one, and people have simply not developed respiratory inhaled vaccines, although people are working on it, and maybe we'll see some. Yeah. Did you see RFK talking about chemtrails? He claimed DARPA was responsible. This is just BS. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's throwing out stuff, and his MAGA people and people who don't know better just believe him. Ridiculous. Could nettles be modified to deliver vaccine in their stinging hairs? It probably could, but I don't know how you control the dose, right? That wouldn't be very good. Do I recall from TWIV that Palazzi is pursuing a stem vaccine? Yes, he's one of the people pursuing a stem vaccines. If vaccines, Tona asks, can be developed in insects or plants, why are they grown in chicken eggs? So the whole infectious influenza virus is grown in chicken eggs, and then it's inactivated, right? But the insect and the plant growth, we're talking about just a protein, right? So if these protein vaccines turned out to be very good, yeah, maybe we wouldn't see, the flu is the only vaccine grown in chicken eggs, so we wouldn't need it anymore. So yeah, it could happen, which would be good. Why does each booster of Chimera give a stronger response to the stem? Well, because you're getting a memory response to the first immunization, right? Whereas the head is not a memory response. Each time it's a de novo or primary response. And so because each head is different, you're going to get a different primary response where the memory, and the head is immunodominant, but because you're using a different head, it's only going to have that first immunization, whereas the stem is going to have a memory response. So if you did it with the same HA, the head would dominate, but because you swap it out, it doesn't. How did polio and smallpox viruses evolve before humans? So smallpox viruses are present in others. Smallpox-related viruses are present in other species, but the ancestor of smallpox is thought to have come from a camel through a gerbil to humans. And so they were evolving in gerbils and camels. We don't know for polio who had polio virus before humans. Nobody has looked at that. There's no evidence. May have been a rodent, but we'll never know because we can't work on it anymore. Nasal vaccines, respiratory infections usually occur through the nose. This does not induce good immunity. Why on earth should nasal vaccines be any more effective? Yes, it's a good question. I don't think they will be, because even if you could immunize the upper tract, you'd have to have memory, and it takes a few days for the memory cells to kick in and make antibodies, in which case you're going to get infected. So this idea that we'll make a nasal vaccine that's sterilizing is wrong. It's totally wrong. It's a thing that, people think that mucosal immunity is really important, right? And there's no question that it is, but you also need other kinds of immunity as well. All right, so eradicating a disease means the pathogen is extinct, but eliminating the disease just means the disease is gone, but the pathogen may still be circulating, in which case you have to keep immunizing, right? Oh, here's a good one from Mark. Recent episodes discuss alternative codon codes. Could a polio vaccine using alternative coding be feasible? Yes, they have been made actually many years ago, and they were made so they recoded the entire poliovirus capsid protein coding region, and they put that up against the NOPV2 that I talked about today. And NOPV2-1, it was more immunogenic. It gave rise to higher antibody titers, so they left the recoded polio out. But I don't think recoded polio would be any better because all the recoding would be, I guess if it's a capsid protein, it can't be removed, right? But it was decided it wasn't immunogenic enough, and now we're not going to go back to it. John, thank you for your support of science communication. I've learned so much polio history from Vincent and Microbe TV over the past few years. Yeah, I do. I do not. I like polio history. I know it really well, so that's why I talk about it a lot. I think smallpox came from camels and gerbils, Les. Is that what Amy was researching? Enteroviruses, trying to find out how polio reverts in the gut. So that work was done before Amy arrived. She was working on enterovirus D68. How do self-amplifying mRNAs work? It is not attenuated. It's just a piece of RNA like the mRNA vaccines for COVID with a polymerase, an RNA polymerase gene attached. So when it gets into the cell, the polymerase is made and will copy and make more copies of the mRNA. Is there any research showing alternate codon representations are more or less stable than the most common sequences? That is, are mutations purely random at different sites, or does sequence before or after the impact mutation rate at different sites? So when you do typically what you're doing is matching the codon usage to the organism, right? So if you want to make poliovirus in E. coli, you have to recode polio to match the codon usage of E. coli, in which case they're stable because it's the right coding sequence for that. But what was done with polio to recode it was to change so each codon, so it's still coded for the same amino acid, but used a different codon. And they did a lot of passage with those viruses, and there was no evidence that they were unstable. Could a phage-vectored mucosal vaccine against polio work? Well, it depends what you're going to encode in the phage, right? So if you're going to make a virus-like particle, you could do that. Right now, the immunogenicity of VLPs is not great. They're being tested for polio. That may be what we see as the next generation polio vaccine. I don't know how you can test it because there isn't sufficient polio globally to do that, right? Let's see. It's 9:54. Let's find some questions to answer. Dan says, sorry, some antibodies will attach to virus particles. If some kind of label is attached to the antibody, there would be virus particles with labels, so maybe they could be separated. Yeah, you can do that already for many years. You can, in fact, yeah, you don't even need to put a label on the antibody because there are other ways you could take the antibody and separate it out. So the Fc portion of the antibody, the bottom part, there are reagents that will bind to that specifically, and you can pull out, separate, whatever they're bound to. Yeah. I asked this question once before, but never got an answer. I heard somewhere that if COVID had been a lab-manipulated virus, there would be markers in the genome of the virus. No, not necessarily. You could make it without markers. You don't have to put markers in it. But how could you engineer it? From what? From nothing? You can't make it from SARS-1. The closest genome they had in the Wuhan lab was 1,200 bases difference, so you can't make it from that. So there's no way they could do it. It's just not possible. Unless you say they're lying, in which case I say there's no evidence that anybody is lying. Is the root of the HA embedded in the viral membrane? It is. Oh, Arkansas River and Arkansas City is pronounced Kansas and Kansas. Okay. Spamlet writes, the framers did not allow for political parties capturing Congress. George Washington warned us not to let them, but they took over as soon as he retired and rendered the Constitution useless. Mark, thank you for your contribution to science communication. Really much appreciate it. And that's it. Well, I got a few more minutes here. Let's go back. Okay is Oklahoma. Tonight was the state abbreviation night. How about that? Every night we have a theme. Tonight, learn your state's abbreviations. Got my first shingle shot and I'm very sore. Is the second worse? Not necessarily. I had 2 and I didn't get sore from any of them. It can be or it can't be, but there has an adjuvant in it that has particularly reactogenic, meaning makes sore arms. So it could be. Mark says, if you want to create a bioweapon, the best way would be to pack a ton of animals together and give tons of antibiotics. Oh, wait, we have pig farms. Yes. Alan Dove would say it's a lot cheaper to buy bombs when it comes to warfare. Yes. Biological agents do not work. And there is no evidence that they ever will work. Thank you, Noira. Thank you. We are here to serve education to everyone. Would recoding interfere with secondary structure? You'd have to maintain. So the secondary structure is mainly, good question, is mainly in the non-coding region. So you leave that alone. And the coding region, there may be some secondary structure there, but this will change it. And it may be in part why these viruses are attenuated, right? Because they have, it's the same protein, yet they don't cause polio. So why is that? We don't know. Maybe it has to do with secondary structure. Yeah. Yep. Can cats be vaccinated against H5? You know, there only been 650 cat infections in the U.S. with H5 documented. Some of them are severe. Yeah, they could be vaccinated if someone developed a vaccine. Yeah, for sure. Okay. That's going to do it today, folks, for office hours. I want to thank the moderators for being here. We had Les, we had Steph, and we had Tom. Thank you so much for being here and keeping the dialogue civil. I think I got everyone there. And Manatee was not here tonight. I want to thank also everyone for coming tonight. Your discussions and questions are great. I love how you move. You find something I say and then you expand and amplify it. I love it. I think that's great. We have 144 of you and 153 likes. What more could I ask, right? Our next office hours will be next Wednesday. That's the 21st of May. We'll also have a TWIV live stream on the 21st. The TWIV is at 1 p.m. Office hours is at 8 p.m. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your coming. And until next time, please be safe. Bye-bye.